Hey, Britton, how you doing? Okay, let's jump to your written rationale. I think this makes a lot of sense, and this points to that you're thinking about what you're doing, and that is just so important. I'm sure you've noticed that in design classes, some students tend to make decisions arbitrarily, and those are not often the best design solutions. As a matter of fact, they're rarely the best design solutions. I mean, you're speaking for a client, therefore it makes sense to represent that client as expeditiously and most effectively as possible. And in this particular case, we've learned that encoding meaning into the client based on our research and data extraction based on that research allows us to assign different sorts of meaning to the client. And those meanings in this particular case are based on our word lists and the way that we have described these objective and subjective traits and attributes to our client, and then transferring that into our visual approach, making a connection between our research and our visual depiction that we've created for our client. Hope that makes sense. I mean, that's basically, in essence, what we're doing here. So it's really, really important, and I think that you've alluded to that in your writing. So that's fantastic. Let's jump over to and in your writing, you mentioned a couple of things. Number one, you said strong and simple. And simple, that word right there, that's your best friend when it comes to design. Simple. Simple designs work, plain and true. Simplicity works in graphic design. Matter of fact, it is the formula for success. So whenever we start getting too complex, the viewer tends to kind of miss the point, so to speak, right? So as simply delivering a message as expeditiously and as simply as possible is quite often the way to go. And I think you've done that. I think you've done a good job. This is good. I think this is you've done a very, very good job here. I think that you've encoded meaning. I think the meaning is apparent based on the name of the company. I think that it's simple enough to be memorable, and I think it's effective. Now, that said, I think there's a couple of things that we can do here to improve the work. Number one, I think red is not the right color for two reasons. Number one, red is, in this particular case, you've got some sharp, pointed design elements in conjunction with red, a color that typically depicts danger. So we have a color that typically depicts danger in conjunction with these pointed elements. The viewer senses danger here, and I'm not sure that's exactly what you want to do. As a matter of fact, I'd be willing to bet that is not your intention here, is to promote a dangerous kind of visual posture for the client. That said, it's not only danger, but also we have some negative connotations. When we have horns and the color red in conjunction with one another, we start to get some evil connotations, right? So, excuse me. So that's another concern. As far as the mark itself, though, I think the one thing, I think these are just too prominent. These horns are too prominent. You got a modernist typeface here. It's actually a Didone. It's a modern typeface. Belonging to the modern family, which means these are just hairline serifs right here. And I think that this is just too thick and too pronounced, these horns. I think they're just too much. Right now you're saying to the client or the viewer, you're saying, hey, this is Minotaur, but hey, look at these cool horns, right? It's almost like as a designer, you want to make sure that the viewer's not going to miss the horns. And that, I think, is just a little bit of overkill. I think they're too big. I think if you were just to come off that serif and just make those horns just tiny based off that serif, that hairline serif. And the other thing is that the way that this is coming off that curved bowl from the cap R, it looks to be shorter than this one. Now, I know it's not. It's an optical illusion, but that's something that you have to kind of consider, those spatial relationships, make sure they look equal. It could possibly entail cropping this one to be physically shorter than the other one, but optically they'll look the same. Again, just really reduce the size here. I mean, really reduce it. Just have that horn coming up just a little bit right off the top of that serif. Enough that it may not be noticed, but when it does, and here's the beauty, when it does get noticed, the viewer's going to go, oh, cool, those are horns, right? Instead of kind of getting force-fed these horns where you're just, as a designer, you're saying, okay, don't miss these horns. The horns are there, right? So let's just reduce the size of those. And instead of like forcing them on a viewer. Let's let the viewer absorb them. I think the impact will be much more powerful when the viewer just kind of it absorbs those. Maybe even not notice them at first, but then after looking at a second, you go, wait, what's, oh, those are horns. How cool. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, my next comment is regarding the Publishing LLC typeface. I don't think it's working. I think that right now, I think your best bet is to use a sans serif, maybe a geometric sans or a modernist sans serif. But I don't think the script face is working. I think there's just too much embellishment down here to kind of just kind of fighting with the horns. You have these swashes and these kind of swoop and these kind of looping. That it's just not playing well in the same sandbox with the horns. So for that reason, I would definitely use a sans serif to add variety. But yeah, I don't think that's working. I mean, quite often, take the name of this typeface, excuse me, and just do a quick, like, oh, suppose this is Dido. And I'm not sure, I'm not positive it is, but let's say it's Dido. So you just go into a Google search and say, what typefaces go well with Dido. And you'll get a lot of sites that feature different combinations of different typefaces. And you can really get some really good ideas there. All right, 6 minutes. Didn't want to do that, but I do want to be as thorough as possible. So great job. All right, so those are my recommendations. If you have any questions, comments, concerns at all, or if I can clarify anything, please let me know. I'll be glad to do so. Good job. Thanks.